The time is now 10:30. I am Andrew Warnes, the Democratic Services Officer for the committee and clerk for today's meeting. With the chairman and vice chairman both having given their apologies for this morning's meeting, we do not have anyone to chair today's meeting. I would therefore like to open up to the committee nominations of a member to be elected as chairman for this meeting only. Do I have any nominations? Councillor Whitaker.
Councillor Sneath.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wimhurst. Thank you. We now have Councillor Thomas Sneath as a valid nomination to be chair for this meeting only. Before I proceed, do I have any further nominations? Okay, with no further nominations, we will now go to the vote. Please raise your hand. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Thank you. Those against? Thank you. Those abstaining? Okay. Thank you. I can confirm that Councillor Thomas Sneath has been elected to be chairman for this meeting only. I would like to invite him to the chairman's seat on the dais. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. In the absence of a vice chairman, I would like to nominate Councillor Woodruff to support me with vice chairman duties for this meeting only. Could we please take a vote? All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that is carried. Councillor Woodruff, would you please join me?
Congratulations on your temporary. I have to say, this is quite unusual that both the chair and the vice chair are not present. And I suppose I want a reassurance that, we've got a really important agenda item here. They're all important, but we have a massively important agenda item of a huge solar farm application, and it is very unfortunate because obviously, presumably, the chair and vice chair would have had briefings about this. I don't know whether you've had briefings about it, Councillor Sneath, but this is it's not really satisfactory, to be honest. And just to remind you, you could ask for further nominations for the vice chair, but I don't think there will be anyway. But I just think, I know it's not for you, but I would just say publicly that this is not really an acceptable situation to have. That both you have vice chairs to cover for the chair, so one would hope either things are resolved or next time one or other of them can sort of manage to make it or consider their position.
Councillor Hill, thank you very much, Steve, for your concern. We do wish the chair and vice chair well, and I have been party to those briefings, so I can reassure you I am well versed in today's procedures. But thank you very much. Your concern has been noted. I would like to begin with a few announcements from the officers. We are joined today by Jan Gibson from the Traffic Regulation Team, Justin Foster and Neil McBride from the Planning, and Marika White, returning from maternity, Martha Rees from Legal Services. Welcome to the Chamber. Can I remind you that this meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website, and with this in mind, I would like to welcome members of the public and the press watching us live. As the meeting is being streamed in the usual way, I would like to remind you that your comments will remain accessible online and may be reported by the media. I would like to begin with the health and safety announcement. We have had our usual fire alarm test this morning, and there are no fire drills planned. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the chamber through the rear doors, leave the building through the reception, and go into the front car park and wait there. Can I remind everyone to ensure that their mobiles, laptops and iPads are on silent for the duration of this meeting? Also, may I remind you that the hearing loop is now activated. I would also like to remind members not to leave the chamber during an item. The request to speak will be collated by Councillor Woodruff. When invited to speak, you should press the button on your microphone unit and make it live, and speak from your seat. Then press again when you have finished your contribution. We will now move to the formal agenda. Agenda item number 1 is apologies of absent and replacement councillors. Andrew, do we have any apologies?
We have apologies from, as mentioned before, Councillor Barry Daish with Councillor Paul Locke replacing him, Councillor Carl Edgus-Gorski with Councillor Chris Reeve replacing him, and Councillor James Bean with Councillor Mike Beecham replacing him. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Item number 2 is declarations of councillors' interest. This is an opportunity for members to declare any pecuniary or other interests. Do members wish to declare any? Councillor Whitaker. Oh, sorry, it was Councillor Beecham.
Thank you, Chair. I need to declare an interest on item 4.3, Horncastle Bowl Alley Lane waiting restrictions. I live in Horncastle. I'm on Horncastle Town Council, who originally requested this, so it's better that I don't take part in this.
Thank you very much. Item number 3. Oh. Sorry, Councillor Overton, I missed you. Sorry.
That's all right, thank you. Just that I am active locally in the Cliff Villages Solar Action Group, but I have not made any comments on the High Marnham application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other declarations? Thank you. Item number 3 is to approve and sign the minutes of the last meeting held on the 9th of June 2025 as a correct and accurate record. The minutes can be found on page 5 to 14 of the agenda pack. Do we have a proposer? Councillor Vernon, do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Wimhurst. Could I please ask all those to vote in favour, raise your hand. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. They have been carried, and I will sign them at the end of the meeting. We now move over to item number 4 on the agenda, and it's the first part of our agenda where the committee will consider the reports and objections to the executive proposal of the traffic regulation orders. These will be presented by Jan Gibson, Programme Leader of Minor Works and Traffic. So item 4.1, we move to the first report, Boston Peck Avenue, Proposed Waiting Restrictions. Jan.
Thank you. Good morning. This first report relates to proposed waiting restrictions on Peck Avenue. Next slide, please. So we've been asked by our colleagues in Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership to consider restrictions here as the school crossing patrol, which operates outside number 41, has had to be withdrawn because of obstruction caused by parked vehicles. Having assessed the site, we propose to introduce double yellow lines as shown to protect visibility and traffic flow at junctions, and to impose mandatory school keep clear markings during the school day as shown. We've had 3 objections, one of which submitted a petition. The residents are concerned that this will be a negative impact for residents and parking will be displaced elsewhere in the estate. Our view is that there is plenty of parking available to residents at all times, which will remain if these restrictions are introduced. The school keep clears will apply only on school days, so will be available in the evenings and at weekends. And we hope that this will enable the reinstatement of the school crossing patrol. We therefore recommend in the report that these objections are overruled so that the scheme may be introduced as advertised. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dee, for the report. Do we have any comments by members? Councillor Vernon.
Thank you, Chairman. Just in support of this application, I'm slightly concerned that a school crossing patrol has had to be removed because of safety concerns. I note that the request has come via the Road Safety Partnership, and I think, yeah, we should approve this application. The one thing I would say is that ultimately it is a condition in the Highway Code, Rule 243, do not stop or park opposite or within 10 metres of a junction, and it's disappointing that we have to go to these lengths, but it appears that it's totally necessary. So I'm happy to propose this application. Thank you.
Councillor Bowles, just in there.
Thank you, Chairman. I will second the application, as Councillor Vernon said, to have had to remove the school crossing is not acceptable. And I did have a very, very similar application in my ward that faced the same sort of opposition and concerns. And I've got to say, once the lines were imposed, the concerns of the residents didn't materialise the way that they thought. So hopefully this will be a similar situation and will be the success it has been in mind. So I will second it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Much appreciated. This has now been moved and seconded, so I'll just ask a question on this. I do support this. Of course, road safety and traffic flow is very important, particularly around schools. Has there been any communication with the school regarding parking responsibly? Because we know that can have some effect if school presses that message to their parents or those who pick up children in the area to try and ease the pressure. Has there been communication at this level? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Yes, our Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership education team routinely contacts schools and assist them. In my experience, all schools have an ongoing battle with parents over on-street parking and do regularly communicate it. The start of every term is usually when they issue letters to parents asking them to park safely. So, yeah, it's an ongoing thing that schools do try and deal with it themselves. Thank you.
Councillor Hill.
Thank you. I mean, I'll just echo Councillor Vernon's comments about it is illegal to already park on a corner. I'm just concerned that are we going to be putting double yellow lines on all corners everywhere because they're not being enforced. The question is, and I think I obviously fully support the school issue, which is only during school time. So these parking restrictions proposed everywhere else will be 24 hours a day. Why is that? Why can it not just be while the why can't it be while the school is? I mean, I think a better idea would have it same hours as the restrictions regarding the school bit. So I don't understand what the justification is for having it when the school's not active at night.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. I think we've proposed the restrictions with the view that the junctions need to be kept clear at all times, regardless of whether the school is open or not. So we have proposed them on that basis.
Yeah, as I previously said, well, it is illegal already, and there is an enforcement issue that it's not being. There are the odd bit where it's not on a junction, isn't it? For opposite Reesby Avenue, for example. Why is that 24 hours a day?
I think, again, that's the main route into the area, and
well,
the traffic...
At night, when the school's not operating at night and at weekends, why are local residents being deprived of that parking space?
I think because from a highway safety and traffic flow point of view, we believe that whole junction needs to be kept clear at all times so that all types of traffic and types of vehicle can use it safely and without being impeded.
Thank you, members. As we have no further questions, the recommendation for approval has been moved by Councillor Vernon and seconded by Councillor Boyles to propose that the committee note the content of the report has given regard to the objections received, and recommended to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport to approve and propose the proposed order. Could I please ask for a vote? All those in favour? Those against? And any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation has been carried. We move to the second report, which is item 4.2 in Bourne. It's Burley Street. Proposed no waiting time at any time. Jan, please.
Thank you. So we were approached by a local business in this area concerning parking on street through Burley Street, obstructing the flow of traffic and vehicles accessing local businesses. Currently, the existing restrictions are shown in red on the Appendix A, and throughout the rest of Burley Street there is a daytime restriction only, apart from on the south side opposite the nursery and numbers 32 to 50 where it's a unrestricted area. Observations through the area have noted that parking does obstruct traffic flow, and we've therefore proposed a 24-hour restriction throughout this area, including the currently unrestricted section. We've had 8 objections to this scheme. The residents in the area have concerns that they will now lose some parking they've come to rely on during the evenings in particular. They do have off-street parking, but it's quite limited, and they feel that the restrictions are overly onerous and have other concerns that are detailed in the report. Our view is that 24 access is needed to the Bourne sorting office to the south of the site, and that residents may use the car park shown at the bottom there throughout at all times for free. So that is available to them. It's therefore recommended that the objections are overruled so that the scheme may be introduced as advertised. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Councillor Woolley, who wishes to speak on this item.
Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully Andrew may have a screenshot of Google Earth, because I think this is probably going to explain it a lot more clearly than I am. Are you able to whiz in? Well, if anybody else has got Google Earth and you can get to Burley Street, you will see it. Hopefully you can recognise the road itself. It's a little tiny road that is within the town centre. Although it is small, it is a busy road simply from the point of view that on your far right-hand side, you've got the A15 in the town centre, and at the bottom, which you can't see, is the A6121, which is the road that leads to Sandford. So you're right in the town centre. So consequently, that little road, Burley Street, means that that's where all the deliveries have to go to get to the shop fronts that are on both the North Street of Bourne and the West Street of Bourne. The reason that I asked for this screenshot was that the concerns from the objections is about, I don't know if you can see, but there's a line of cars about, a third of the way up the screenshot. If you go back to the plan itself, you'll see that that line of cars is opposite the nursery, and that in itself means that the nursery are having terrible problems getting deliveries in and out, as are they are with their children as well, and it's creating an issue, because when vehicles come out of that nursery, as an example, they're having to cut across the pavement either way, because the line of cars that are parked on the south side. I'm hoping this is making absolute sense. You've not only got that, but where you can see the words car park at the bottom of the screen, that is a free car park. It's free 24 hours a day, but it also provides the access for the back of the post office for the deliveries. So again, it's a very heavily used area. And as has already been mentioned, all the way through from Exeter Street to, and you can't quite see North Street on the top right-hand side, there are already restrictions in place. And over a period of time, as with anywhere else, town centres have got busier, small town centres have got busier, and I support the request that there is a restriction that's made from Exeter Street to North Street. Hoping that makes sense, but I'm really happy to answer any questions if it's absolute nonsense.
Thank you, Councillor Woolley. It makes perfect sense to me. I went on Street View and actually went through the road, and I can understand exactly where you're coming from. So thank you very much indeed for that. Councillor Reeve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in favour of the proposal in general. I'd just like to ask who the car park is currently owned by, and just question whether it will retain its free status indefinitely, because if it suddenly becomes one that's going to be charged for, that may put a whole different complex on it. So do we know who owns the car park?
I think it's South Kesteven District Council. Yeah. And I think Councillor Woolley may be able to answer that question.
It is free at the moment, and South Kesteven, I think it's for the foreseeable future, but who knows. But there is ample parking there just round the corner.
Councillor Reeve, can you just confirm, were you moving this item? Yes, you said you were happy to move it if...
Oh, sorry, yes.
you
yes,
are happy
yes,
to move.
please, yes.
Thank you, just for clarification. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, I would support this and happy to second the proposal, although we are removing some parking spaces, but all the terraced houses, I think that's the main issue. The terraced houses to the north of Burley Street, they all have their own parking there, and has just been explained. There is a car park just round the corner, well, literally opposite, which is certainly during the evenings is not full, and this road is quite busy, as Councillor Woolley has said, in terms of you access a lot of the shops and the post office and so on at the back there, and the bank, and the post office is a key issue there. So I would happy to second the proposal.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bowles.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, happy to support the proposal again. I've just got a question really on the papers and the committee. Really. I'm new to this committee this civic year, but I'm used to sitting on planning at district for several years. And within all of the officer reports we get at the district council, they include photos of the street scene, what it looks like, and that really does help you understand what the issues are and a feel for it. Is that not normal? I appreciate you probably can't answer that, Chairman. Is this not normal process here? And if it's not, I'd like to request that it should be, really, because I don't know about other members in the room. I don't really know Bourne, but if I'd had some, visual support, pictures to explain the issues to me, it would be far more beneficial.
Thank you, Councillor Bowles. Yeah, we can arrange that if that's what's required. Yeah, we certainly can, to illustrate the problem. If that's what, yeah, I'll take that back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowles. I think you do highlight a very important. I mean, I've been on Street View and everything else, but the members of the public may access this and not have those facilities. So the photos of a street scene and a satellite image would have been helpful. So if we could make that request, that'd be wonderful. Councillor Hill, do you have a further question? Wonderful. As there are no other speakers, and we have had it moved by Councillor Reeve and seconded by Councillor Hill, we'd like to propose that the committee note the content of the report, have given regard to the objections received, and recommend to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport to support the proposed order. Could I please ask for a vote? All those in favour, please raise your hand. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation has been carried. We now move on to the next report, item 4.3, Horncastle, Bell Avenue Lane, Stanhope Road and Louth Road. Proposed waiting restrictions. Jan, please.
Thank you. So the proposals here on Bowlally Lane, it is a cul-de-sac and it supports 2 schools. We have put some restrictions in previously, but we've revisited the area and are proposing on Bowlally Lane a mixture of 24-hour and part-time restrictions as shown in Appendix A, and also mandatory school keep clear markings. Next slide, please. Similarly, we're proposing a mixture of restrictions on Stanhope Road and on Louth Road, which where parents can access the school via the link footway shown on the right. We've had 2 objections to these proposals from residents in the area, concerned that parking will be displaced onto their streets, making it difficult for them to park close to their properties. Our view is that the restrictions are required to maintain highway safety and manage traffic flow through these areas at very busy periods, particularly when there's lots of young pedestrians navigating through the area. The recommendation, therefore, is that the proposals are overruled so we may introduce the scheme as advertised. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody wishing to speak on this item? Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, having looked through it, it looks all okay as far as I can see. I mean, doesn't seem to be any real issues with it, and I'd like to move that we accept the officer's proposal on this. Thank you.
Councillor Vernon.
Thank you, Chairman. I too am happy with this application. I do think the safety of children around a school is absolutely paramount, and I'm happy to propose or second, depending on if you proposed. Yep, I'm happy to second that application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other comments? Again, I'd like to say I had a good look at this application. I think this is a very good report, and it is for safety of children, as Councillor Taylor would always say, is the highest amount of our priority. So we've had it moved by Councillor Wimhurst and seconded by Councillor Vernon. I'd like to propose then that the committee notes the content of the report and the traffic regulation order as detailed in appendices A and B, have given regard to the objections received and recommends to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport that the proposed order be approved. Could I please have a show of hands in support? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation is carried. The next item on the agenda is item 4.4 in Lincoln, Maple Street, Beach Street and Elder Street. Proposed no waiting at any time. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you. So this scheme has come about following concerns raised by the refuge waste management team in City of Lincoln Council. They sometimes have to actually cancel collections owing to parking close to junctions, which means the vehicles cannot manoeuvre. Maple Street is the main access into what is a large cul-de-sac. So we've also proposed an extension to the double yellow lines along Maple Street itself. We believe these lines will protect accesses and also dropped curbs but for use by pedestrians. We've had 2 objections stating that parking is very difficult in the area and this will exacerbate that. Whilst we acknowledge that parking is very limited in the area, it's very highly densely populated, we believe that these restrictions are required in order to protect access for larger vehicles and for general traffic accessing the area, and would therefore recommend in the report that the objections are overruled so we can introduce the scheme as advertised. Thank you.
Wonderful. Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I don't see any problem with this, just, you know, as it stands here. I mean, we do need that access for larger vehicles and everything else. So I'd like to move and propose that we accept the recommendations on this. Thank you.
Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chair. I know the area very well, and I think we should support the recommendation.
Councillor Overton.
Actually, that's what I was going to say. So fine, thank you. Seconded if it hasn't already been done. Thank you.
Councillor Vernon.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just also like to make the point that if refuse lorries are having trouble getting down the street, then there may also be a potential impact on fire vehicles and whatnot. So I would wholeheartedly support this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vernon. You stole my line on here, but yes, well, absolutely. Especially as we have, I think to the left, there is a activities can go there as well with people. Was it a youth club or Jan, the community centre? So again, you know, allowing access in and out of that community centre is vital. So we've had it moved by Councillor Wimhurst and seconded by Councillor Murray. Therefore, that the committee note the content of the report, has given regard to the objections received, and recommends to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport that proposed to be approved. Councillor Murray, you spoke before, Councillor Overton. Did you? Wonderful. In that case, can we amend it to seconded by Councillor Overton? My apologies. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation has now carried. We now move to the next item, item 4.5 on the agenda in Lincoln. It is Farrington Crescent, proposed waiting restrictions. Jan.
Thank you. Again, this is a cul-de-sac on a large estate in Lincoln off Skellingthorpe Road. Concerns have been raised with us about parking on Farrington Crescent, leading to traffic obstruction, particularly for larger vehicles. There is a farm to the north of this site which has been there a long time and historically uses this route out. And also the effect on forward visibility for traffic around the bends. Parking exacerbates this, and there's been one or two potential collisions in the area. We've had 6 objections, I think, to this one, whereby residents think they're a little bit over the top. They're worried about displacement of parking as a result of the restrictions further into the estate, causing issues there. Our view is that applying the restrictions on short areas isn't really an option here. We do need to restrict throughout this length, and therefore it's recommended in the report that the objections are overruled so that we can introduce the scheme as advertised. Thank you.
We have no speakers currently, but I did have a good look at this application. Yes, I do believe the comments made by it is maybe a little, I think the word was overkill, but having looked at the area, the houses that do front onto the area have very large driveways, so they can accommodate a lot of visitors. There is other parking around the estate which can be used, and therefore I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation. Councillor Reeve.
Thank you. I'm happy to second that idea. The objections from the residents that it displaces parking, I do sympathise with them, but as stated, most of them have large yards and driveways, and there is no automatic right to park on the highway near your own property. It's an unfortunate thing about modern life that everybody wants their own car, but at the same time, by having their own cars parked near the house, it also discourages people from using public transport where available. So I think it's a good idea, and I'll second that.
Thank you. Councillor Vernon.
Thank you, Chairman. Jan, may I just ask one question before I comment, which is, I note in the report you mentioned there's non-residents visiting the fishing lake. Does the fishing lake have any parking itself, and hence this is overspill, or Sorry.
Right, thank you, Councillor Vernon. I don't believe it does have a specific area for parking, so they are just parking on street.
With that in mind, I'm very happy to support the recommendation as in the report. I think if you implement it in patches, there will be other areas that are found within the gaps, so to speak. So I think it does need to be blanket as per the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vernon. Councillor Hill.
Yeah, bearing that in mind, so where do we think these people who are currently parking on this road will then park?
They may park further into the estate. What we find is that displaced parking tends to spread out a bit more and become less concentrated. And in other areas of the estate, it's not such a critical route in and out of the development, and it's not so winding. So we think it's more tolerable in other areas.
Thank you. If we have no other speakers, then I would like to, as I say, I've moved the recommendation, and it's been seconded by Councillor Reeve, to propose that the committee note the content of the report, have given regard to the objections received, and recommends to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport that the proposed order be approved. Could I please ask those members to raise their hands in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation is now carried. We now move to the next item, item 4.6 in Louth, the new link road between Brackenborough Road and Billingbrook Road, proposed 7.5 tonne weight limit. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you, Chairman. So the new development shown in Appendix A to the right is a very large residential development, and the developer was required as part of the application to construct the link road shown in red. This will provide an alternative means of access to the A16 for residential traffic and mitigate congestion in the town centre. The developer has also funded the processing of a traffic regulation order to introduce a 7.5 tonne weight limit on this road to deter its use by HGV traffic. We've had two objections stating that the road should be open to all traffic to relieve congestion in the town. However, it is the view of the officers and our development management colleagues that we would not wish to draw additional HGV traffic to this area to access the industrial estate on Bolingbroke Road, and that traffic should make choices further north and use the A16 to do that, not Brackenborough Road. We therefore recommend that the objections are overruled so that we may introduce this weight limit. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers or anybody wish to comment? Councillor Reeve.
Thank you, Chairman. I move to support this because the thing is, it's human nature that particularly lorry drivers will take the shortest route possible and whatever's most convenient. It doesn't physically stop them. If they've made a wrong turning or missed their turning, it doesn't physically stop them. And although they may get into trouble for using that road, if they find themselves in that position, it would probably be the lesser of two evils to use the road, even though they've been told not to. So it's not like there's physical barriers stopping them. So I think it's a good idea that it's brought in and put into place. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to just echo the sentiments of Councillor Reeve there, and I'd like to second that, please. Thank you.
We have no other speakers. It has been moved by Councillor Reeve and seconded by Councillor Wimhurst, and therefore we propose that the committee note the content of the report, has given regard to the objections received, and recommends to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport that proposed order be approved. Then I invite members to show their support by raising their hands. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation is now carried. We move on to the final traffic item, item 4.7, the West Willingborough A153 proposed speed limit reduction. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you. So the Parish Council has asked us on a number of occasions to reduce the existing 50-mile-an-hour limit that applies on this section of the A13 through the village. Previously it has not met criteria, but recent speed surveys indicate mean speeds of 45 and 43. 43 does meet the criteria for a 40-mile-an-hour limit, whereas 45 is a borderline case, and therefore we would need approval from the Executive Council for Highways and Transport for this reduction in speed limit. Our recommendation in the report is that it is we are able to go ahead with the consultation process for this scheme. The police have raised no concerns with the reduction of limit here. So the recommendation is that it is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Overton to speak?
Thank you. I'd just like to support this. It is very difficult for villagers, and also where you've got a number of changes of speed. This does almost meet the criteria, and it does meet the criteria for a decision by human beings without calculations necessarily. So I should say councillors as well as by councillors. So thank you very much. Propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Overton. Councillor Hills.
As Jane said, there's a long history of issue here. So many years, well, quite a few years ago, the residents of West Willoughby, which is a very small village, and some of the houses are, you can just about make it out, are on a sort of lay-by. So some years ago, although it didn't even hit the 50-mile-an-hour criteria, this is a main road, it's 60 miles an hour, the criteria were stretched, shall we say, to enable the speed limit to be reduced to 50 miles an hour. So I don't know whether the criteria have changed. I don't think there's been any more development in West Willoughby. So never mind hitting a 50-mile-an-hour proposal, we are now talking about 40 miles an hour. So could I ask you, I think the only criteria which you're relying on for this recommendation is the speed limit as the presumed average speed. Is that correct? There are no other justifications.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Where we have an existing limit, the only thing we need to demonstrate is a mean speed that fits the threshold for that limit reduction. And over time, I think the increase in traffic flows does have a generally slowing effect on traffic generally. So I think here that's maybe what's happened.
But the only criteria is the fact that the speed limit has been reduced, and then because people before you hit here, and then that's the only criteria.
It is based on mean speed, yeah.
My concern is this happens a lot, Chairman, that they start using mean speed to reduce it, and frankly, I'm not saying in this particular case, there are some ridiculous speed limits now in various places. The problem with that is that people are starting to ignore them, and I know a certain place not too far away from where I live, where it is now a 40 on a busy A road. Most people just ignore it. So I have a concern that the more you put all these restrictions in, which motorists then wonder what the point is, because obviously they feel that this is not reasonable, the more you will just encourage people to ignore the speed limit. And as we know from previous things, the enforcement or the police enforcement is currently nearly non-existent, I have to say. So I do have a concern that the reliance on the mean speed will mean that people then will actually use that as a justification to actually override our normal speed limit criteria. And I think in general terms, not for this committee, but I think it's something that should be looked at by the chairman by the portfolio holder, that are we going to have a lot of small inappropriate speed reductions? Because I'm a bit old-fashioned. I feel that the old way was basically what people felt was reasonable if you're driving along. Obviously, if you're driving in an urban area, most of us would say 30 is just right, or maybe even 20 is right. But the more you start but going away from that, the more you are encouraging people just to say, well, I'm just going to ignore those speed limits. So I do have concerns about this. I can't quite remember why we have a 40 just on that, Jean can remember where the junction, where the existing 40 is, because there's a road, there's a Woody's farmyard is just there, and then there's a road goes to Sudbrook. I can't remember why we've got that 40 there. Some time ago, wasn't it? But what was the justification for that?
So in the speed limit policy, where we don't have sufficient development to justify a limit, we look at accident rate, which we determine through traffic flow and accidents. And if we get a rate of above 35, we can then consider a limit. So that was the case here. And then we set the limit on the basis of mean speed. You are right that it used to be 85 percentile speed that we used, and that gave you a slightly higher reading. But the DFT now have recommended that we use mean speed, and that change happened when we redid the policy 10 years ago. I think the only thing I would say is that the 40-mile-an-hour limit now enables that parish council to partake in community speed watch. So if they wanted to have additional measures to encourage traffic to slow down, they could take that route now, whereas with the 50 they couldn't.
Thank you, Councillor Hill.
Yeah, I think it was, I remember now, there was some bad accidents on that junction, weren't there? I know it quite well, and it's not the best of junctions, so I understand that, and I suppose there is a logic to just extending the 40 to beyond the village, but it's a recommendation from the Department of Transport, and I think they would like everybody going around at 10 miles an hour, I think, left to their own devices. So I just worry that we are just putting speed limits in everywhere, and some of these are just not really going to be adhered to.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councillor Hill. Those comments have been noted. Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say I do agree with what Councillor Hill just said about the constant reductions of speed limits and things like that. However, in this instance, through the village, reducing it may be appropriate in this instance. So if it's been proposed, I would second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with some of the comments from Councillor Hill regarding speed limits. As we know, we launched the traffic management scrutiny policy at the last term. There's a number of recommendations, including the consistency of speed. So that's one area we do need to probably revisit those recommendations and look that they are implemented in a common sense fashion. Also, as we're well aware, sometimes antisocial driving is a problem, isn't it? It's tailgating, it's inconsiderate drivers, driver behaviour. I believe there's still further work to do there. Yes, speed limits are one factor, but reducing that, if a driver is still driving badly, irresponsible driving, that still seems to be the problem on the road. That's where I believe there's still further work to do. So whether it's whether our council comms team through publications, we do need to work with our partners in the police and parish councils and residents to press that message about driver behaviour. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Overton.
Thank you very much. I think there has been a change over the years in general. I remember there was a time when I was trying to get a speed limit in Branston going back about 20 years, and somebody who drives all the way from Skegness every day was not keen on that, as you can imagine. But people in Branston were certainly keen on it. And this is the issue, you know, where we've got people who are travelling big distances now and want to get from A to B, don't want to be slowed down. And I've noticed that my drive to Grantham Station, for example, takes longer because the speed limits, and I just have to allow more time, and that's how it goes. And actually, it makes for a more relaxing drive. I think the whole nation has changed a bit, because when you think, I know Wales was, introducing their low speed limits, created a lot of opposition. Nevertheless, it's still there and it's happening. And actually, when I'm driving there, I have to say, I think it's quite relaxing. You know, you can actually get out of a side road without worrying of dashing for a tiny space. So actually, I think we do have to think differently about the way we drive now. And it is about just driving really carefully. You know, if the speed limit's 60, then we don't go 60. You go, a relaxing, easy drive that doesn't cause any risks. So I think that, you know, it is important. I think there has been a change is where I'm coming from. And that's reflected in that the government's changed their policy, and also we've changed our policy as well, in that we've reconsidered, and I twice sat on the working group, task group, looking at speed limits and the policy for speed limits rather throughout our area. So our policy, I think, is actually matching the local demand, because most villagers complain bitterly at the speed of traffic passing straight through their village. I think the point about that is that it means that we're looking at the balance between those extra few seconds it takes for a car to go through and the quality of life of the residents. And as we've got an increase in traffic now than we've had before, it's been steadily increasing. You know, a few speeding cars you could cope with, but now when it's a lot of speeding cars, it becomes a huge concern to residents who are concerned about their quality of life as well as the safety on the roads. So I actually think our policy is correct, and I think our officers have been correct to bring it today, because there is a borderline. You know, absolutely right, there is a borderline, and that's where, and as Councillor Hill correctly looked at the exact position of this particular application, and I think that's exactly correct. That's what we should be doing. And looking at this particular application, I would support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chair. As already said, you know, obviously in full support of this. I just want to revisit, obviously, the average speeds. So effectively, if you have a 60 mile an hour, people are often going to go under that so they don't get a ticket or what have you. So if they're driving at 65, it pulls the average down then, if we're looking at the average, to 50. And then if people are doing that again, they're going down at 45, we're reducing it to 40. Then where would it end? You know, so I do think that does need to be visited and looked at in policy. Thank you.
Councillor Hill.
Point of information, there is a joke in Wales that the only people who obey the 20 mile an hour limit are the tourists. The locals just ignore it. So back to my point again. I would also point out here that none of these houses are actually on the edge of the road. They all have substantial gardens. I think the issue they have is getting in and out of their properties onto the main road, which has always been the case. But I note the comments that have been made.
Chairman, I don't think we should accept hearsay in this, and we are discussing a particular application, which I support. Thank you.
Not hearsay. There was a public meeting many years ago where I think 100% of the residents came along, and the issue they had was we want to get onto we were having trouble getting in. It's not hearsay. This is on historic knowledge.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. I mean, I'm not party to that previous knowledge. It's not in the report, but thank you for making us all aware. I think we have discussed this. I think as a parish council has brought this forward and have asked, the fact that we have got an average of 43 to 45 shows that the people travelling through the area do want to go at a slower pace and enjoy the scenery, as Councillor Overton has mentioned. So I think that I am very happy that everybody has had their say. We have had a mover of Councillor Overton, seconded by Councillor Wimhurst. Sorry, did I hear the report the parish council had?
Yeah, I mean, I think the local member raised it with us.
Sorry, it was a local member. No, thank you for that correction. It was a local member. You are correct. Sorry about that. As again, we've had it moved and seconded to the committee. So, A, we note that the content of the report has been given due regard to the relevant speed limit policy criteria as set out in the report. Has considered the proposal to the committee the statutory process for a traffic regulation order to introduce a 40 mile per hour speed limit for the section of road noted in Appendix A, and recommends to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport that the proposed order be approved. I would then like to ask the members to, those in support, to please raise their hand. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation has been carried. And that concludes this part of the meeting. I'd like to thank Jan Gibson for leading the committee through the presentations and advising the committee. Thank you. We now move on to the final item of the agenda, item 5.1, application by One Earth Solar Farm Limited for a development consent order to install solar PV panels to generate up to 740 megawatts of power, on-site battery storage and associated infrastructure, including battery energy storage systems, PV modules and mounting structures, on-site supporting equipment, including inverters, transformers and switchgear, on-site substations and underground cabling to connect to the National Grid substation at High Marnham. The report invites the committee to approve the submission of the local impact report at Appendix B to the One Earth Solar Examining Authority and to inform the One Earth Solar Examining Authority of the County Council's objection to the development consent order application. I would like to invite Neil McBride, Head of Planning, and Justin Foster, Infrastructure Manager, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning. This report relates to an application that's been made by the One Earth Solar Farm Limited to the Secretary of State for a 60-year development consent order for the construction and operation of a solar energy park on land in both Nottinghamshire and Lincolnshire. The Lincolnshire part of the development site is located in the district of West Lindsey. The Council is a consultee in the development consent order process and is required to provide its comments on an application to an examining authority appointed by the Secretary of State, who will, following a 6-month examination, make a recommendation as to whether the development consent order should be granted or not. It's important to note that the Council is not the determining authority for this proposal. The committee report under consideration today seeks approval for the submission of a local impact report, which is included at Appendix B. The local impact report details the Council's proposed comments to the examining authority regarding the likely impacts of the development. Additionally, the Council is invited to submit written representations on any matters relevant to the proposal. The objections outlined in the committee report's recommendation are intended to form the basis of the Council's written response. The application for this proposal was made in February of this year, and in March the Planning Inspectorate accepted it for examination. The examination in public commenced on the 8th of July, and an examination timetable has been published which sets out various dates for hearings and also deadlines by which information should be submitted by interested parties. The first deadline is on the 29th of July, and at this point the Council is required to submit its local impact report and written representation, and provides the opportunity for the Council to set out its overall position on the application. The One Earth development site is proposed to be located on predominantly agricultural land lying to the east and west of the River Trent, and that's shown on the slide, on the plan on the slide. It's straddling the Nottinghamshire-Lincolnshire boundary. The whole site covers an area of 1,409 hectares. However, only 206 hectares are located within Lincolnshire, and that's in the northeast quadrant of the site. Newton-on-Trent lies to the north of the site in Lincolnshire, east of the River Trent, and is the closest settlement in Lincolnshire to the development site. Can I have the next slide, please? This next plan shows the Lincolnshire part of the site in a little more close-up. The grey line is the West Lindsey district boundary. All of the land north of this line is the land in Lincolnshire. The A57 is in green and borders the site to the north. Key features of the site include its location in the Trent Valley Landscape Character Area, which is defined by gently undulating and low-lying landforms with ridges dividing shallow, broad river valleys and floodplains. The development site primarily consists of agricultural fields. However, several areas within the order limits have been omitted to avoid current developed areas, which includes Hall Water Reservoir and Hall Water Treatment Works located off the A1133. And also the Newton-on-Trent oil wells site, which is a safeguarded mineral site to the east of the water treatment works. Of the land in Lincolnshire, approximately 67% is best and most versatile agricultural land, amounting to 137 hectares. Within the Lincolnshire portion of the site, there are no statutory landscape or ecological designations. Similarly, there are no heritage assets found within the Lincolnshire part of the order limits. The closest designated assets are located in Newton-on-Trent. Approximately 56% of the order limits falls within flood zones 2 and 3. Both flood zones are present within the Lincolnshire part of the site. Within the Lincolnshire part of the site, it is located in a mineral safeguarding area for sand and gravel, which is identified in the current Lincolnshire Minerals and Waste Local Plan. The safeguarding mineral site, the Newton-on-Trent oil well, is also surrounded by the order limits boundary, and it's identified by the red square in the centre of this plan. There are 2 public rights of way within Lincolnshire that intersect the development site. Could I have the next slide, please? This plan shows the illustrative master plan for the site, and I appreciate this is on a very large scale, but we are talking of a development site covering over 1,400 hectares. It identifies the proposed locations for specific aspects of the development. The development would consist of solar photovoltaic PV, for short, electricity generating areas, on-site substations, battery energy storage facilities, known as BESS for short, and a 400 kV cable route corridor to connect the development to a proposed new National Grid substation at High Marnham and other associated infrastructure. The development is expected to be able to generate 740 megawatts of electrical output per year to the grid and would have an anticipated operational life of 60 years, following which it would be decommissioned. A detailed description of the development is set out in paragraphs 11 to 18 of the committee report. Areas proposed for ground-mounted solar PV generating areas are shown on this plan by the lighter green horizontally striped areas. The maximum total surface area proposed to be covered by solar PV panels would be 945 hectares. That's across the whole site, across Nottinghamshire and Lincolnshire. These areas would comprise of solar PV modules fixed to a mounting structure. The height of the panels would vary across the site depending on the flood risk, potential flood risk in that area. The maximum height proposed is 3.8 metres. A BESS and substation, which are designed to provide peak generation and grid balancing services to the national grid, are also proposed to be located in the Lincolnshire part of the site. And the location for this is the square parcel of land located to the east of the reservoir, shown by diagonal stripes on the plan. The east substation would have a footprint of 23,800 metres squares, and the Lincolnshire BESS would occupy an area of up to 85,000 metres squared. So that's around 10.88 hectares in total. Other infrastructure would include power conversion stations, incorporating the inverters, transformers and switchgear, which would also be required to manage the electricity generated by the solar PV modules, on-site cabling between the solar PV panels, internal access tracks and compounds for the construction period. The electricity generated by the development would be exported by 400 kilovolt underground cable connections between the on-site substations to the proposed National Grid High Marnham substation. The cables would be in a trench up to 3 metres deep. The River Trent would be crossed using a trenchless technique. The plan also shows areas proposed for green infrastructure, and those are the areas shaded in the darker green. The proposed habitat creation includes species-rich grassland, hedgerows, woodland and tree belts. Existing hedgerows and woodland ditches, ponds and field margins where they are present would be retained, with the exception of some small breaks at crossings required for new access tracks and security fencing, or at cable route junctions and access junctions. Hedgerows would be reinstated where the cable crossings require partial removal. The public rights of way that cross the site would be retained, and there are no proposals to permanently stop up or temporarily divert any public right of way during the construction or operational phases of the development. The proposals would see the creation of new permissive paths, and some of these are to be in the Lincolnshire part of the site, and they are shown in yellow by yellow lines on the plan. And there's further details on these set out in Chapter 12 of the Local Impact Report. If I could have the next slide, please. This next plan shows a different visualisation of the site works, and the reason I've included it is to point out the indicative corridor for the underground cables, which is across the central, running from east to west across the centre of the site, diagonally blue striped band which crosses the River Trent. The Trent would be crossed using trenchless horizontal drilling techniques. If I could have the next slide, please. This slide just shows some typical examples of what solar PVs might look like and their mounting structures, and some examples of additional infrastructure that would be needed, such as in the bottom left, which is a typical BESS storage container, and the bottom right is a power converter station. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay, this final slide shows construction vehicles where they would access the site, which would be via the A57 and the A113 and Roadwood Lane, which is shown by the purple line. The blue pinpoints identify the gate positions at proposed access points into the site. Turning to the local impact report and the impacts of the development, the topic areas that have been considered are set out from section 7 in the local impact report. The issues considered in the report are not exhaustive, but cover those impacts where the council has expertise and or an interest. The potential impacts have been assessed against the relevant national planning policies and the local development plan. The local impact report identifies positive, neutral and negative effects that could arise as a result of the development at this stage. It should be noted that the national planning policy, as set out in the overarching National Policy Statement for Energy, EM1, considers this type of development as critical national priority infrastructure. In principle, this development could help meet targets for reducing carbon emissions and would offer a significant positive impacts in terms of the transition and movement towards net zero. As such, it is considered to accord with EM1 and with the sustainable development objectives contained in the National Planning Policy Framework and in local plan policies. There is also the potential for this proposal to deliver biodiversity net gain, improvements to the public right-of-way network and some economic and community benefits. The positive benefits will, however, need to be balanced by the examining authority against any potential negative effects. The local impact report sets out the likely issues and impacts that may arise from the construction, operation and decommissioning of the development. Whilst I don't propose to go through all the issues set out in the local impact report in detail, as members will already be aware of them from having seen the report, but I would like to highlight those that are currently considered most significant in terms of the potential for negative impacts, and those that will form the basis of the recommendation to raise an objection to the proposals in the Council's written representation. The first point is in relation to grid connection. The local impact report raises concern about the certainty and timing of grid connection, as the project relies on a connection to a proposed new substation at High Marnham, which does not yet benefit from planning permission and is some years away from being completed. Grid connection is a crucial aspect of this proposal, and there is a potential risk for negative environmental impacts to occur from the One Earth solar farm development, commencing without the benefits of generation which would be relied upon for any grant of consent being secured. It is therefore recommended that should the Secretary of State be minded to grant consent for the development, the development consent order should restrict that commencement of development until such time as the High Marnham substation has been granted consent and a material start is made on that development. Turning to landscape and visual, we have engaged AAH landscape consultants to review the application on behalf of the council, and their full comments are set out as an appendix to the local impact report. By reason of its mass and scale, it is considered that the development would lead to significant adverse landscape effects on landscape character and visual amenity during all main phases of the development. The development has the potential to transform the local landscape by altering its character on a large scale, and has the potential to affect a wider landscape character at a regional scale by replacing large areas of agricultural and rural land with solar development, affecting the current openness, tranquility and agricultural character that are identified as defining characteristics of the area. The scale and extent of development would also lead to significant adverse effects on views from receptors by altering the views from within an agricultural or rural landscape to that of a landscape with large-scale solar development. The cumulative landscape and visual effects of this development with other large projects also have the potential to bring about significant landscape and visual effects. Turning to traffic and transport, the Highway Authority are satisfied with the assessment that has been undertaken. However, some mitigation measures are considered to be necessary, and there is further information that is going to need to be provided as part of the construction traffic management plan, which will be secured as a requirement through the development consent order if it's granted. Overall, traffic and transport impacts in Lincolnshire's road network during the construction phase is considered to be negative, but not severe in the context of the tests in the National Planning Policy EM1 and the National Planning Policy Framework. Subject to the necessary mitigations being secured, no objection is raised by the Highway Authority. Turning to archaeology, there are concerns in the local impact report about the assessment, which is considered to fall considerably short of acceptable standards and fails to meet the requirements set out in policy and guidance. The level of archaeological investigations conducted so far is considered to be inadequate to assess the potential impact on buried heritage assets. Significant further information is considered to be required to adequately understand the impact on the archaeological resource from this development. A comprehensive assessment of the potential impacts on archaeology and a critique of the applicant's assessment to date is set out in Chapter 14 of the Local Impact Report. In terms of agricultural land, Chapter 15 of the Local Impact Report considers the impact of the development on agricultural land. Additionally, landscape consultants have been commissioned to review the application, and their report is also provided as an appendix to the Local Impact Report. As we've seen with other large-scale solar schemes, there would be a loss of best and most versatile agricultural land, which is considered to be significant at district and county level, particularly when considered cumulatively with the other large-scale solar schemes in the wider area that have either been granted consent or are in the development consent over process currently. The concerns are expressed in the local impact report about the incremental loss of best and most versatile land to large-scale infrastructure projects, which intensifies the pressure on remaining agricultural land to maintain food production. And this could lead to increased reliance on food imports, raising concerns about sustainability due to longer supply chains, high carbon emissions and food miles. Of the 206 hectares within Lincolnshire, 137.6, which is around 66.79%, is best and most versatile agricultural land. Over the full development site, including the Nottinghamshire land, 170 hectares of best and most versatile land would be permanently removed from use due to the construction of the BESSes and substation facilities and due to ecological enhancement measures. This loss of best and most versatile land is considered to be contrary to national policy in the National Planning Policy Statements EN1 and EN3, and also Policy S67 of the Central Lincolnshire Local Plan. Whilst the loss of best and most versatile land under solar PV panels is considered to be temporary, 60 years is a long period of time. Productive farmland would be removed and replaced with lower intensity grass-based system. This loss of arable production is also considered to be significant at a local level. The impact of the development on minerals is also a concern for the council. Parts of the order limits are located within a sand and gravel mineral safeguarding area. The potential for mineral sterilisation is therefore significant. At this time, it is not considered that it has been adequately demonstrated that the proposals would accord with the mineral safeguarding policies in the Lincolnshire Minerals and Waste Local Plan. There are also concerns regarding the generation of waste, particularly the cumulative impacts of this development combined with other multiple large-scale solar farms that have either now been consented or are planned in Lincolnshire. With no current facilities in the UK to recycle the scale of solar panels that is being proposed, this is a growing concern for Lincolnshire County Council, not only considering decommissioning, but also from the need to replace panels within the development's lifetime. Turning to flood risk, large parts of the site are located in flood zones 2 and 3, which are the areas at highest risk of flooding. The council, as the lead local flood authority, has not raised any concerns regarding the assessments undertaken by the applicant in terms of flood risk and surface water drainage. However, in terms of the site selection process, the National Planning Policy Statement EM1 requires a sequential test to be followed to direct developments to areas with the lowest flood risk, considering all flood sources and climate change. Even if a flood risk assessment shows that the development can be made safe without increasing flood risk elsewhere, the sequential test must be met. If low-risk areas are unavailable, the test should compare sites in medium-risk areas, and if none are available, then in high-risk areas. Approximately 56% of the total site is within flood zones 2 and 3, and this also appears to be the case in the portion of the development site located within Lincolnshire. Currently, however, it is not considered there is sufficient information and evidence to properly interrogate the assertion that the sequential test has been passed with regards to site selection, and further evidence is therefore considered to be required to verify this. Following further scrutiny since the drafting of the local impact report, it is proposed that the local impact report is updated prior to submission to the examining authority to include reference to the sequential test requirements. Finally, the local impact report highlights concerns about cumulative impacts. There are currently 5 development consent orders being granted for large-scale solar schemes in Lincolnshire, and there are a further 8 schemes, including the One Earth proposal, that are at various stages of their development consent order process. The cumulative impacts of the One Earth solar farm combined with these other developments could be significant and include landscape and visual effects, landscape character impacts, construction-related traffic and transport movements, the long-term loss of best and most versatile agricultural land, and also there are concerns around the cumulative impacts of waste. Concern is also raised about the exclusion of other solar NSIP schemes in Lincolnshire from the short list of projects that the applicant has considered for the assessment of inter-project effects. That concludes the presentation on the report. The recommendation to this committee is to approve the submission of the local impact report at Appendix B to the One Earth Examining Authority, subject to the amendment advised regarding the sequential test, and that the County Council informs the Examining Authority of its objection to the One Earth Solar Development Consent Order application in its written response based on the reasons summarised in the recommendation on the committee report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Justine, for your detailed presentation. We have no registered speakers to the application. Are there any members of the committee who would like to make comment on this application? First on the list we have is Councillor Locke.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you to officers for producing such a report. You've pretty much quoted everything I would probably ask about it, so I'm reassured that you've done some work on it. So having personally spent several hours studying this report over the last couple of weeks, yeah, particularly like to thank everyone involved in producing it. There's some hard work that's gone into that. Yeah, things like, so I'll just read out things that I'd noted, but yeah, recognising the long-term negative effect, loss of 137.6 hectares of BMV farmland is not what we want for Lincolnshire. Around point 31 in the report, highlighting it's still to be demonstrated significant adverse environmental impacts of it. They're not appropriately managed or mitigated through this DCO process yet. I also particularly note there's the two BESS elements in this project included in the OSEF, one being in Lincolnshire, that LFR have specifically reserved their right to object at further specific details being submitted. So along with further concerns around the waste processing, etc., as touched on about the solar panels. I'd like to probably just put as a summary point, after I'm fully supporting this motion, to approve your report and to inform One Earth Solar Examination Authority of our objection. But what I find mostly concerning as a summary point is a clear lack of an authoritative body from the government that should be in place to ensure best practice, safety, cyber security regulations, particularly in relation to the BESS aspect of it, as we're seeing nationally with fires, etc. They need adhering to a regulatory body because these are emerging critical national priority infrastructure projects. They are going to be our power stations. They should be treated as such. So there's a real gap in there, and we are looking to see that demonstrated. So yeah, and finally, thank you very much for all that hard work, thorough report that you've put in, all the aspects that we've addressed as responsibility as the council. But ultimately, we have responsibility to our communities as a whole of Lincolnshire. So yes, I propose this project, this report fully, and to uphold those objections. Thank you for your work.
Just to check, Councillor Locke, are you happy with the additional comments that were made to move this motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Next we have is Councillor Woodworth.
Thank you, Chair. This One Earth solar project is obviously, as we've heard the report, and it's very good and very in depth. It's a 740 megawatt solar farm spanning 1,400 hectares of our agricultural land, and obviously mostly in Nottinghamshire, but there is a lot of infrastructure, and part of it's going to be within Lincolnshire. The site composes of about 53% of best most versatile land. None of the land, no land is bad land, but best most versatile land is land that can consistently yield high yield, high quality products year in, year out without very little intervention. This is critical for cereals, potatoes, beets, and it underpins our food security. I'm also mindful that I think the agricultural land classification system uses climate data from 1940 to 1980. And as such, I think this may misrepresent the actual amount of quality land that we have in the county and the UK. The proposed loss of the 660 hectares of land, combined with cumulative loss of over 10,000 hectares, not acres, in the county-wide project, poses a significant threat to agricultural capacity. I found to help visualise this, these projects cumulatively will consume well over 14,000 football pitches of land. The soil management plan does address some construction impacts, but there is very little evidence of robust mitigation of this or alignment with DEFRA's food security policies. Obviously, we've already touched on the adverse landscape character and visual amenities, as we saw in the Springwell Farm application, and this can't be ignored. I was going to obviously propose this item as well. Obviously, Councillor Locke's already done that, so I'm happy to second, as discussed in this agenda item, moving forward. But I think that the ALC's outdated climate data, the landscape impact, and just the loss of the land is enough that we agree to this proposal that's been put forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodworth. Next, we have Councillor Reeve.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to point out a couple of points. First of all, I totally agree with everything that's been said previously by the council and by the councillors. But I find it misleading by the developers to call this a solar farm. I think that's misleading. Yes, it's farming sunlight, but it's actually solar industrialisation of good farmland. That's the reality. It's turning open countryside into an industrial zone. The fact that it's classed as temporary for 60 years, well, in my world, 60 years is permanent. I won't be here in 60 years. So for me, that's permanent. And the other side of it is we don't see any promises that any money for decommissioning is ring-fenced. Any of these companies can go bankrupt at any point and say, oh, we haven't got the money to decommission and put it all back to normal at some point in the future. And I would like to see some sort of guarantee that money will be ring-fenced to decommission these sites at some point in the future, particularly if there's some sort of natural event like happened in North Wales where there was a hailstorm and the solar panels were smashed to pieces. It would be so easy for a company to turn around and say, oh, we haven't got the money to fix that. And we're going bust, and so nobody can do nothing about it, and we're left with contaminated land then, as well as the industrialisation. And I just, if it's possible, I'd like to add those to any comments that's put forward to the Planning Inspectorate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeve. Councillor Hill.
Thank you. Could I just say, excellent report, and I think you've really covered many of the concerns that I'm sure most of us have over this and about what's happening in our county. So thank you very much. I do have a slight bone to pick with the report, which is paragraph 82, where it does state that on balance, that because there'll be employment skills in the local supply chain, that is a positive. These panels are made in China, so there's no at all benefit for local manufacturing. They're all made in China. I don't know where the what they sit on is made, but I'm guessing they come as a total unit from China, and they so no benefit to the local economy whatsoever. And indeed, in terms of economics, the total of the 3,000 acres are going to be proposed on Nottinghamshire and Lincolnshire. They are proposing to take 3,000 acres out of production for 60 years. So that will be all those farm workers, all those suppliers to all the farms, they will all cease. So there's a massive negative impact on the local economy, and I would hope that that will be taken into account. You just think of 3,000 acres. On average now, you probably need one worker per 1,000 acres, so that's 3 people gone for 60 years. And I said the supply chain is significant, and there's a lot of local businesses who supply local farms with their stuff, and that will go. So my view is this is a massive negative impact, and it won't even be, I don't know who the owners of these are, but the majority aren't UK based. So the profits from the subsidies, which we're all going to provide through our electricity bills, will all go to, presumably to some company which is probably, or private equity enterprise, which probably is not even based in Lincolnshire, in the whole country. So I would hope that they would be you would actually look at those sort of comments on that basis, because I think that's been missed a bit. In terms of the agricultural issue, which I've mentioned, I think we shouldn't be fooled into some of the nonsense which some of these developers actually talk about agriculture. Let's be clear, as Councillor Reaver said, this is the industrialisation of the landscape. We can talk about biodiversity net gain, but let's see, there's going to be a load of panels. There won't be any sheep, because often they have pictures of sheep grazing, and somebody mentioned, oh, there'll be some grass. No, they won't. So there'll be grass strips which will be mown from time to time. There won't be any sheep or any other animals, because they won't want sheep nibbling on the cables and everything else. And of course, what happens under the panels themselves? Well, basically, it's not a rest, it's starvation. There'll be no light, there'll be no rain, there'll be no sun. It would just sit there sterile. And of course, if it wasn't for the panels, that would all be growing crops. And what would those crops be doing? Well, they would be taking CO2 out in the atmosphere. So again, I don't buy, and I'm a bit concerned that we are going along with this propaganda from these companies. There is actually a net loss, I think, and then we all know about biodiversity net gain. Well, what does that mean? It's not specified here, but something might happen somewhere, possibly. Again, land will be taken out of food production to provide the BNG. So again, there's another loss. And of course, with 3,000 acres, if you take the whole proposal, that's 30,000, average acre is a hectare. You get, if it's 3,000 acres, you get 4 or 5 tonnes per acre. 10 tonnes per, and then you're talking about thousands of tonnes. If it was just all growing wheat, for example, you are talking about thousands and thousands of tonnes of wheat not being grown. So in 20 years' time, when who knows what's happening, when the world is very unstable, people might be asking why can't we grow our own food in Lincolnshire or in the country? And we knew with the Second World War we were desperately short of food because we are not self-sufficient, and again talking about 60 years and all the rest of it. Where the nonsense really comes to hit home to me is this grid connection issue. What a nonsense. So what we're proposing is that this is given permission on the basis that, oh, there might be a grid connection, but it hasn't even got permission for it yet. It's the equivalent of somebody asking for a housing estate to be built in the middle of fields. Oh, don't worry about the roads to it because we'll deal with that maybe later. I mean, this again is a nonsense, and the grid connection is a major issue. We know there's a massive problem with grid capacity, and we know about pylons and all the rest of it. That won't be resolved until the next decade. So we'll could have a situation where all this lot is built, and as we know, they will begin then, under the current system, be getting subsidies to not produce electricity. I mean, this is all just nonsense. So on the economic necessity argument, again, I would say this is rubbish. This is rubbish, and I really support that we should not do it. Finally, on landscape and visual, as has been said, there is the cumulative effect, which government persistently ignores. So it's not just this, it's all the other ones which are currently being proposed, and I'm sure there are many others in the pipeline. So again, I don't think... Why the rush? The rush, let's be honest, is to get hold of some subsidies before somebody else does. That's what's going on here, and I'm really concerned that that Lincolnshire, it seems to be, is being targeted by developers with the support of government, I would say, possibly, to actually cover us in this sort of infrastructure. And I can just say about BESS, bit of an expert in BESS now, because I nearly got one in my patch. It went away, but I suspect it will come back again. Again, this is battery storage. It's not just a low level, big area. There are some large structures as well have to be put in. But when you actually look at the science behind the BESS and you ask, well, how long will this battery capacity last? Not very long. So I have to say again, and these BESS are very intrusive, but you'll see them for a long way away. So all in all, I fully support the recommendations and just ask that those additional points be considered before you put the final thing in. But a very good report, and I fully support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Next, we have Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with some of the comments made in this meeting. I agree with Councillor Hill's comments. And this is one of the most serious issues that's facing this county, in this country, because we've heard about those concerns. I mean, Councillor Reeve referred to the word farm. That's one of my concerns, looking at the description of this and the language farm. We know this is not a farm in the traditional sense, but a large-scale industrial development in a countryside. And we do now need to realise this, because we have this duty to go through this in detail, ask questions and put the spotlight on this, because this is the loss of some of our best land in the country. We do know we are living in a time of very international uncertainty. We can't argue with that, and food security must be a top priority, because I do support in buying bridges, buying Lincolnshire. That becomes increasingly difficult when we cover the countryside with solar panels, because if this continues, we do become that dumping ground. There are no positives in this, just negatives. It has a negative impact on our environment, our visual landscape, because we do know there are alternatives. We can support solar on rooftops, on brownfield sites, even over car parks, or look at alternatives, developing infrastructure such as tidal power. There are alternatives out there. So we do need to put the spotlight on this, ask questions. We've heard the 60 years referred to. We're looking around, one or two may be here in 60 years' time, but the majority of us will not be, to scrutinise this and ask questions. We know it is a lifetime. That damage, that devastating impact on our rural communities, it's gone forever. And as we know, the food grown around here does feed this country. It's sold in the constituencies of the members of the Cabinet. They need to realise this, what Lincolnshire can offer this, because we do have a duty in this council. We are elected to represent our residents, and I believe we do need to really work together now to safeguard our precious land for future generations. We have that duty, and we need to work together for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And yes, it will be my lifetime as well, unfortunately. So moving on to Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I don't agree with the report, don't support the recommendation. I think the report simply tries to justify climate change denial. What I do support is the generation of clean, renewable energy, which will mitigate climate change. And anybody who thinks that climate change isn't real needs to think again.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Overton.
Thank you very much. I might as well start there. I'm not a climate denier by any means, and indeed I'm the European spokesperson in support of renewable energy. I would not, however, support this. This is a hijacking of the issue to take it towards global company profit and not towards anything that we should be working towards. There's absolutely no reason at all why the 630,000 acres of commercial roof should not be covered first. And if the government was really looking towards reducing our emissions, they would put the simple rule that all new buildings have got to pay proper regard to being energy efficient. They've not done it yet, even now. So this is not about renewable energy. This is about, I'm sorry to say, it's much more about profits that going abroad. The issue on, however, sticking to this application, which I am, the issue here is that this is a huge imposition on our rural landscape. It changes the nature of countryside, of rural countryside, to commercial, industrial appearance. And I think that could be strengthened. I see the word farm accidentally slipped in one of the comments. Might search and replace, because you did say, the officer did correctly use the term farming industry all the way through her presentation. And just want to make sure that it doesn't slip in anywhere there. This is nothing about farming. This is about industry. The point about the percentage of land covered is important, because what is not properly recognised is the actual amount of applications coming forward, which are vast, far more than are needed. And that means that we will be paying somebody to do nothing, to switch off their machines, as we've already found in some areas. The batteries, as has been said, is only 4 hours or thereabouts, 4 hours I was told. So again, not much use. So it is completely misplaced ambition, and it's just been hijacked. The other thing I wanted to bring up was about, I want to support the points made about the economic development and the economic value. Where we've seen solar already come forward, such as at Branston, the workers were not from this country. I met those workers, they are imported. So not only are the solar panels made using coal in China and shipped out here, also the workers are brought specially for that job. This is not about local economy. And the profits also, of course, go abroad in the global companies that are taking over this industry at the moment. So it's very hard to see any local benefit. I think also the point about the cumulative impact, I don't think this is properly covered. And when I asked some people, they say that they only have to take into account the applications that are already in, not the ones that are being discussed. So again, that is not a proper look. You know, we need to have a proper look at all of the applications, all of the ambitions that are coming forward. Because it might seem like a smallish percentage of the total area of England and Wales and Scotland and Ireland, but nevertheless, it's all here. This is good land. They're not putting the solar up on the thin sheep growing lands of the uplands. They're putting it on the best farmland. And not only is ours the best farmland in the country, it is also among the best in the world. So if anyone thinks they're going to be getting food from abroad, I just wonder which desertification country they're thinking of getting it from. This is where food grows well. This is where wheat is an excellent place for growing wheat, as is shown by the numbers. And we've just said about 5 tons to an acre, 3,487 acres comes to around 17,000 tons of wheat that will need to be imported from abroad. And that has a cost. And where is that coming from? So it just seems completely daft to cover good farmland with something that makes electricity when it could be on roofs, railways, car parks, down the middle of motorways, actually on windows now as well. So everything could be used, any built structure can be used. So the benefit is to the green energy is only if it's needed. And as we said, there's a vast oversupply in progress. So even that is not really there. So I'm really concerned about this application in this location, and I would support the comments made in the refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Overton, MBE. I think the officers have received quite a few comments. Locke and Woodworth made a lot of poignant comments. Councillor Reeve, the ring fencing of the decommission cost. Councillor Hill, OBE, the loss of jobs in agriculture, both workers and suppliers. I believe the comment, the word you're looking for is cart before the horse also within this application. Councillor Taylor, completely agree, buy British, buy Lincolnshire. And Councillor Overton at MBE, new build solar policy should be looked at. I can see your frustration with the countryside being industrialised. And yes, looking at the applications as a whole and removing the best growing land will inevitably lead to imports within the next 60 years. If there are no other speakers, Councillor Vernon before I close.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I've had my hand up for ages, so I thought I'd missed out there. But if I may just make a few points just before we move to our decision. One of the key things that I've noted in the report under paragraph 104, I note that community benefit is not a material planning consideration, but I do find it disappointing that Lincolnshire isn't automatically included as part of that, and I think the wording in that needs to be a lot stronger than it is, if possible. We should be included in that completely, in the same way that Nottinghamshire, Sherwood, Bassetlaw, etc. are. We need to be included in that. Going backwards ever so slightly, this is absolutely vast, absolutely vast. Yes, some of it isn't in Lincolnshire and some of it is in Nottinghamshire, but we can't take away from the fact that this is absolutely huge. I note that we've discussed obviously already the cumulative impact, so I'm not going to go over that again. The one point I would like to make, which is in the report, and I think it's worth noting out loud and so that those watching can see and hear the impact, 5,134 hectares of best and most versatile land in Lincolnshire are covered by solar, proposed to be covered by solar, or granted permission to be solar. That is 12,600 acres of our best and most versatile land. It cannot continue like this, and I really have grave concerns about what will happen when it goes to the government for their decision. But I think here we can only express our serious concerns by supporting the officers' reports and recommendations. And may I take this opportunity to thank the officers for the huge amount of work that has gone into this very thorough report and very, very extensive presentation, which was really helpful. So thank you. But yeah, I really would like to see the section on community benefits strengthened. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vernon. Would you like that adding into the report?
If officers are comfortable with that, I think it would be very useful, because at the moment it's a sort of, as you've said, it's not going to be that we're covered automatically, and I really feel that that should be in there. Thank you.
Okay, if I can come in there, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Vernon. Yes, we have noted in the committee report that, as proposed by the applicant, the Community Benefits Fund would be administered by a foundation in Nottinghamshire, and we are making representations to the applicant that should include the Lincolnshire as well. In terms of making that as part of our formal local impact report, community benefits, as you've quite rightly said, are not a material consideration in the planning balance. Therefore, the examining authority wouldn't give any weight to those community benefits. The most appropriate route, I feel, regarding the community benefits is for that continued dialogue directly with the applicant regarding those benefits, and it is still an ongoing process with the applicant. It hasn't stopped just because the application has now been submitted. We still do have that dialogue and regular contact with them, so we'll continue to pursue that through those direct contact routes.
Chairman, if I may just come back really briefly, I completely understand what you're saying, and I'm happy to obviously take your extremely professional and whatnot advice. But I would hope that the applicant would listen to this and would understand the strength of feeling from this committee that sort of the community benefit, as you say, not a material planning consideration, but is something that we should be considered to be part of from the very start of the application. So thank you.
Councillor Vernon, if you'd like to move that was added to it, we can add it.
I am happy for the officers to add it as they see fit, conscious of what the officers have just said regarding it going into the local impact report and not wishing to disrupt or put something in which may weaken our case in any way whatsoever. But I think sort of the officers here today have obviously got a feel for, I hope, how all of the committee feel about this. And I'm happy to perhaps add an additional suggestion in that should be taken forward as a matter of urgency as well, if the officers are happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vernon. Could I just ask, the other comments that are made by the councillors, are they happy for those comments to be made and added if it will assist us with our... Brilliant.
Chairman, I'd like to come back on some of those points, if I may. In terms of the comments around the socioeconomics, I totally appreciate that the situation with solar panels where they are, a lot of them are imported from China. At this stage, because this application doesn't have the specific details, we don't know at this point where the solar panels would come from. So we shouldn't really make the assumption that they will necessarily all come from China, because that may not be the case. In reviewing the socio-economic chapter, we have consulted with our Economic Development Service, who has carried out a review, and whilst there are some negative socio-economic impacts in terms of impact on the agricultural economy, there will be some benefits in terms of supplies, skills and education benefits that will come forward or are proposed to come forward as part of that proposal. However, I'm happy to review the comments that we've made in the local impact report in light of the committee's comments today. In terms of decommissioning, the application does include an outline decommissioning plan, and it is usual as part of the examination of these proposals for decommissioning funding to be considered. And as we take part in the examination and go through the hearings, we'll certainly make any relevant representations on the decommissioning plan throughout that process. Finally, cumulative impacts, you will see from the more detailed chapter in the local impact report that we have raised some concerns, very specific concerns in this particular case regarding the assessment of cumulative impacts. Generally, the assessment of cumulative impacts, I appreciate, does perhaps feel a little bit frustrating because the way the guidance that's issued by the Planning Inspectorate works, that developments are classed into tiers. So the tier 1 developments are those that have got a planning permission or a development consent, order consent, and then there are lower tiers depending on the stage in their process, and obviously the amount of information that is available on some of the emerging schemes is very limited, and therefore is very difficult to make that a cumulative assessment. But we do strongly sort of put forward our concerns about how that assessment is carried out in our local impact report, and as an authority we're very, very aware of the potential for those significant cumulative effects should all these schemes be granted consent, and it is a matter that we'll continue to look at. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Overton, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Very, very helpful response. Just a little thought on the economy. I don't know that department, and I wasn't in on that conversation, but on our task and finish group, we've done quite a big piece of work with colleagues around the value of agriculture to Lincolnshire. And it came to something like 45% of the economy, and that's including the knock-on costs. So I think what we do need to do is have another look at that piece of work perhaps, and because this is a percentage taken out, it's part of that taken out, and for some industries it might actually be the tipping point so that just the remainder is no longer viable. And that's certainly the case often in farms. And so maybe we could just look at that in this particular area. The other thought that just came was about Lincolnshire, the part of this that's in Lincolnshire is a worse application because it's 67 or almost 60, over 66% of the land being best and most versatile and safeguarding for minerals. So actually the Lincolnshire part is worse, the worst of all probably. So those two are really strong. Maybe we should look at that as well, the impact specifically on Lincolnshire. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
I've just in support of what Councillor Overton said. What Justine said, I think she was being helpful. I'm sure she was, but I do have a genuine concern. We don't make solar panels in this country. We might do one day, but every time we try to go down this net zero route and have factories doing this, it never seems to work. So currently, we don't supply them at all. But what is totally missed by the economic advice we've been given is the loss to the local economy, not just of the farms and those who work in them, but also the supply chain as well. Again, I also have concerns about the advice on environment. Again, I think that's flawed, that has been gone. It is far too positive in terms of the actual net result of all of this, because we've also got to remember when these panels are manufactured, that is a negative to the environment, especially as Councillor Overton said, using coal and, let's be clear, potentially dubious methods of employment, if I could put it like that. So I do think, and I think Justine was saying she will amend but I do think in more general terms, because this won't be the last of these that comes along, we know that. But you are in support of what we said, and obviously I would ask, not for this meeting, but for outside of it, perhaps another look at the advice that certainly the ED department and indeed the environmental people give is probably worth a look. But Justine, you are agreeing with us. I thought you were being very helpful, but just double checking.
Yeah, in light of members' sentiment and feelings and what you've expressed in this room today, I will review what we've set out in the socioeconomic part of our report, and I will consult further with our economic development colleagues regarding your concerns and look to make appropriate changes.
Thank you. Just for clarification, we have a mover of Councillor Locke and a seconder of Councillor Woodward. Would both of you move that we add the additional comments that have been made in the chamber this afternoon, this morning?
That's fine by me, yes.
Yes, fine, Chair. Yeah. Thank you.
As we have no other speakers and we have had a mover and a seconder, I propose that the committee approves the submission of the local impact report at Appendix B to the One Earth Solar Examining Authority and informs the One Earth Solar Examining Authority of the County Council's objection to the Development Consent Order application. I'll then ask,
just to say
with the amended words that we have, and the comments on the sequential test. Wonderful. With all those additions, I would then ask, would all those members in favour please raise their hand? Any against? And any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried. That now concludes the business of the meeting. I'd just like to thank everybody, members and officers, for their participation. Our next meeting will be held on Monday, the 1st of September at 10:30 a.m. Thank you to everyone for your attendance. We close the meeting at 12:27. Thank you so much.